Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Leadership from the Heart. Today we have Bhavesh Naik. I said it wrong, even though I practiced. He is the founder of creative director AWARE LLC, which drives cultural transformation in business by engaging the humanity of people. Couldn't have a better business. AWARE, your human framework, helps leaders build enduring organizations through online courses, executive coaching, and workplace training. He also is the host of Business Philosopher Within You, guiding listeners to nurture high-performing and sustainable organizations. That is my jam, Bhavesh. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Good. I'm great, and thank you for having me on your podcast, Romie. This is great, and you did say my name right, so we're good.
Thank you. So Bhavesh, I definitely want to get into all the things. I just explored your website. I met George. I think George is awesome.
I love it.
And definitely want to start with what led you from engineering into this world of business consulting, because, that's very different from the traditional engineering, what engineers do. So I would love to dive into that first.
Absolutely. When I went to college, I went to an engineering college, so I'm a BS in EE, electrical engineering. And there was a time, I still remember this was way back, but there are some still strong memories from those days. We were required to take humanities courses, even as an electrical engineering student. And these humanities courses were basically philosophy, religions of the world, political science, those kinds of things. What we consider now in tech world, soft stuff, right?
Right.
And almost everyone that I used to hang out with, all my buddies in the college, they used to hate having to take those electives and those classes because they wanted to do all the cool, hard stuff, right? The coding and electrical circuits and all those great, cool stuff. They wanted to do, the tacky stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I also love tacky stuff. I still do. But I almost, just as much as I love the tacky stuff, I also love that humanities stuff. And if you force me to pick one, I would actually today, looking back, I probably would pick the humanities stuff because it turns out in the hindsight that was my gift.
Yeah.
That I'm more passionate about the human side of things. So I would be sitting in a class like electronic mechanical or probability and statistics or something like that, something heavy like that. And I would be sitting in a class like that. And then I would be walking over to a building, the next building, we have like humanities building and the electrical engineering building and stuff like that. So I would be walking over and I would always be thinking about this question, which is, why? What does humanities have to do with this tech stuff? And the answer came in a way, some of it just kind of came together just as I was walking and, having thoughts and things like that. Some thought pops in your head. They call it the aha moment, right? The proverbial aha moment. It's, aha, this is why. But the answer, to summarize, is that all the technology that we have today, if you move the entire humanity to Mars and left all our technology behind, none of this technology is useful to anyone. Right? So the idea of the reason why the technology exists is to serve the human condition in some way, shape, or form. And we miss this. This is so common sense when you kind of think about that. But even today we miss it, especially today with this artificial intelligence, which is wonderful. I love artificial intelligence and where we're going in this uncharted territory with it. But at the same time, we are forgetting that all of this technology is there to serve humanity. So my career basically took that. So long story short, I worked for IBM, Hughes, companies like that. Actually, my first job with IBM was working in what they used to call knowledge-based systems, which today we call artificial intelligence, right? It's funny, it's come full circle. So IBM and then Hughes and some big companies, and then I had my own consulting firm doing techie stuff, which gradually transitioned to doing human performance stuff. Right. So the insight there was that when we actually see humans as humans, and we'll probably get into what that means, we actually unlock. This is not a moral argument. It's not an ethical argument. It's not something that you should do, you must be good to the planet. Those are all the right thoughts in the right context. But the reason why we do it is from a very selfish perspective of a leader or a business owner, which is to make the business run more efficiently, more smoothly, and have all the business things that we strive for, more sales and more profits and, market growth, all of those things. So when you pay attention to the human aspect of our people, we actually thrive as a business organization or even as a society, as a civilization.
For sure.
So
For
I
sure.
don't know if that answers the question.
100% it does. And
Sure.
I mean, you unlocked something for me. I just had an aha moment when you were like, yeah, all tech is supposed to serve humanity, not the
Yeah.
other way around. And I do think that sometimes we get it backwards. I think we just forget,
Yes. Yeah.
and I think that that's a really good take that helps me. So I'm sure it's going to help somebody else out there. Was it through so I want to know more about your transition. You worked with IBM, you worked in AI before it was called AI, and then
Right.
you just like made a decision one day, did something like, what was the transition for you to say, okay, no more of this. I'm going to go into this and I'm going to teach like humanity to humans, which is wild, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Teaching humanity to humans. I love that. It was actually a gradual transition, but
Mm,
the gradual transition was driven by these aha moments. I actually love that concept of aha moment. If you can kind of sidetrack a little bit,
yeah.
learning. I am in the business of learning, and what I see learning as is it's transformation. It's an inside out transformation of a person, and in a good way, not in a bad way. So that transformation happens through what I call a series of aha moments. So learning can be defined as two things, right? Learning is just accumulation of information, data on top of the data that we have, and we collect more and more information. Humans do this well, but machines actually do it better. As long as we have a lot of memory, we can store a lot of information. But humans can do something that machines cannot, which is have an insight. So the word knowledge comes from the ancient term called gnosis, Gnosis. And the meaning of the term gnosis was it's an insight into the nature of things that goes beyond the conditioning that we have, all our preconceived notion and belief systems and things like that. And we have a searing insight into the nature of things. It could be fleeting, it could be very small. And all of us have so many of them every day, right? So that aha moment is basically, for me, that is everything.
Yeah.
Because I strive for it. It makes my day when I have a few good aha moments,
Yeah.
right, in a day. So to answer your question, it was gradual, but it was driven by these aha moments, right? And I had a series of aha moments. I had some great mentors that I worked with. I had some great professors that I came across, some great teachers, great coaches. And so it was a gradual transformation. I would probably say, if I'm going back, I would say that my technology firm probably existed for about 5 years before I started to. It was more like, problems that people were bringing to me. More and more, I felt that technology was not really a solution to those problems. It was
Right.
actually other things,
Yeah.
human things, right? Because we think that technology is a solution to all our problems. It is
Mhm.
actually is not. And that's when I started going into some of this other there and started exploring. And I thought that I rediscovered my passion for the human side of
Sure.
things.
Right.
And so it was a gradual transformation and transition. But
Yeah.
I've been doing this for a good 15, 20 years. I stopped counting a long time ago.
Yeah, and I want to honor you for that. I want to highlight the fact that like you followed your aha moments, right? Because I
Yes,
feel like so many people, they get the engineering degree, they have the career, and they have these aha moments that are driving them
right.
away from it to take it with them, not to leave it behind, right?
Yeah,
And they can't seem to disconnect from it or detach from it because they think they've become one with it. They think they are that. And so
that's correct.
I
Exactly.
definitely want to highlight and honor
Yeah,
you and say thank you for following your aha moments because it can be scary, right? It's like you said, it's
exactly.
uncharted territory,
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
So
It is scary. And it's breaking through the comfort zone for a
for
lot of us.
sure.
They become our limitations.
Right.
So they become our identification. I'm an electrical engineer,
Right.
and I'm a software developer, and I'm a CCNA this and that, and I'm a
Hmm.
certified something else, and I've got all these letters and in front of my name, and that becomes my identity. Now,
Yeah.
when I follow that, the gift or the calling, and what's coming from inside as an insight, coming from inside as an insight, that requires you to break through those limitations and preconceived notions of who we are. And that's scary. 100%. It's very scary. Sometimes you have physical reactions. It physically is anxiety producing,
Right.
So sometimes, but if you take that step, at least internally, then it's energizing.
Correct. And I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said, just take the step. I think a lot of us, when we get that urge or that nudge, we start to like go all the way, to the end. And that's overwhelming.
That's true. Yeah.
And if we just said, okay, today I'm going to take one step further towards this aha moment, towards this download, whatever you want to call it, it's just guiding you, right?
Exactly.
And becoming an engineer was just part of that journey.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I heard somewhere, just a quick one, because you mentioned that. I heard this somewhere, and I'm probably not going to be able to remember the name of the person who said it, but you only have to be gutsy 5 seconds at a time.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Only 5 seconds at a time.
Very
true.
So
having an uncomfortable thought that we've never thought before, you only have to think it for second, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, and then just go on with your day.
Right.
And let it do its work.
Right. I agree. Wow, that resonates a lot with me. Cool. So what does it mean for a business owner to become a business philosopher? And how do you teach that? Because there's not many, well, let me not say that. There could be many people who are philosophical, but in my experience, it's kind of hard to tap into that part of them. So one, what is it? And then two, how do you teach people to become that?
Sure. Excellent question. Philosopher and philosophy, conception or misconception about the philosopher is someone who sits on a couch, drinks wine, and thinks about the meaning of life, right? And business people, we are programmed to kind of almost have a visceral reaction to that. We don't like that because we are programmed to take action.
Execute.
Right? And execute and take action, right? And anything that goes against that is it just doesn't, we're programmed not to go there, right? So it makes us feel uncomfortable. But when you look at the successful people who have built successful businesses, and you may agree or disagree with their business philosophies, but they're all business philosophers. If you have Steve Jobs. So I like to mention these names, not because I think they are the best examples, but they're well-known examples. These are iconic people. And people get it right away that, if I give you 5 names, the company names, and say, who's the best business philosopher? If I say Apple, Microsoft, Disney, Amazon, you'll come up with the names of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Walt Disney. Yeah. Right. So intuitively, we know that they are the best business philosophers for their businesses. So this is not a new concept, right? People who have built long-lasting, highly successful businesses, they already were their own business philosophers. And I like to also say to everyone that even when you think you're not a business philosopher, you actually are a business philosopher because it's already there. You just have to uncover it, discover it. It's all the things that we talked about, looking in and inside and all that. So having said all of that, what is a business? So who is a philosopher? That's the first question, right?
Yeah.
So if I go to Wikipedia and search, people are confused about it. If you look at dictionaries, if you have 6 versions of dictionary, they'll give you 6 different answers. So what I have done in my work is that I've actually come up with a definition that is sort of like a common, but it's also common sense. Okay. So that definition is, there are 2 things that a philosopher does. One is that she or he thinks her own independent thoughts. That doesn't mean that they are unique or original. They may be the same thoughts that others have thought about, but to them, it's original, right? So we think basically, and these are our own thoughts, not the thoughts that I've read from a book or watched in a movie or picked up from a YouTube video. This is my own. And it's kind of like that aha moment that we talked about. Yeah. It's a refreshing thought that we think, right? And it's my own, right? 7 billion other people may have thought about that, but I thought about this in a moment and I didn't get it from anywhere else. Right. There's a word for that in philosophy world. They call it dogma, right? It's not somebody else's truth. It's my own truth, right? I discovered that. So they think they do their own thinking, original, authentic thinking. And they have more trust in that, more faith in that than other people's thinking, which is kind of strange because in universities now they teach you have to have consensus and you must source whatever you say from all these books. So they're teaching us not to trust our own thinking. I'm not saying that that's not valuable. All of that is valuable, but this is more valuable than that.
For
right?
sure.
So they do their own thinking. That's number one. And then the big question is, what do they think about? This is a big question that some people, so your listeners may have some pushback on that, which is that they think about human condition, right? And if you look at all philosophers, somewhere, even when they think, they're just thinking about stuff, ultimately they'll think about, well, human condition, how does this help relieve a suffering or help achieve a goal, right? And then that definition expands beyond Aristotle and folks like that,
Right.
to Confucius, to more people like the Buddha, right? And so the philosophy is not just thinking, but it's also connecting to the common human condition,
Yeah.
right? So the philosopher does those two things, right? They do their own thinking and they think about human condition. The third element is the business philosopher. So what is a business philosopher? So business philosopher basically takes this pie in the sky philosophy, right? It's all these beautiful things, right, that we think about and we want to do, and they make it practical. They bring it to the earth and bring to us as solutions to our problems in a way that is sustainable financially. You can't just have a business where you say, I'm going to fix a problem and not having revenue coming in exchange. You can't survive as a business entity. So they bring products or services as solutions to our human suffering. So there's that connection to, so those three things.
That's very cool. And so when someone doesn't know how to tap into that for themselves, how do you extract that from them?
Yeah, so there is, so first of all, I like to, so if you're a business owner, which you are, right?
Yes.
You're building a business, and I have to know whether or not you actually want it, meaning that there's a reason for you to do it, right? If you could, the vast majority of us, they call it intellectual laziness, right? Now I'm one of those too, where if we didn't have enough of an motivation to do it, we won't do it, right? Even thinking. So there's, we won't think thoughts that we need to think about if we don't have enough of an incentive to do it, right? So if I come to you and say, hey, maybe you should be your own business philosopher, and you say, get out of here, right? Some guy on the internet telling me to be my own business philosopher, it doesn't make any sense. But then if I come to you and I say, how long you think your business is going to last, right? And you say, well, I don't know. I get different answers from different people depending on where they are, right? So is your business going to last a long time? So this is my key. So I actually only solve one problem, right? I only solve, the problem is that we are creating dependent organizations, right? So why become your own business philosopher? I'm kind of getting around a wide way. I'm kind of getting to that. Why do it? Because we need to build sustainable organizations that can survive for a long time,
right,
in the marketplace, right? So to do that, we need to be our own business philosopher, right? So even that is a disconnect there. So there is a dependency thing going on. We are creating, and I often say that we have a dependency epidemic in organizations. So the dependency epidemic is that the leadership needs to get involved in the business themselves. And if they go away for 3 months or 6 months, the business goes away,
right.
which is kind of strange. I work with 100 people organization, 200 people, 500 people organization. The leader goes away, or with the key 3 or 4 people go away. The business goes away in 6 months, right? So it's a dependent organization. It's not self-empowered organization. So why do it? So to make it an independent or a self-empowered organization.
Right.
Now, if this is important to you, then you say, well, okay, I'm listening, right? So then I would say that the reason why we need to be our own business philosopher is because we've gotten this management thing wrong the last 300, 400, maybe 5,000 years. So, we put man on the moon and brought him home safe. We hold in the palms of our hands this used to be a giant supercomputer about 50 years ago.
Right.
That took an entire city.
Right.
But we we still manage our people the way we did when we built the pyramids, right? Or build the cities, right?
Yep.
5,000 years ago. So we really haven't innovated anything. So we've innovated technology, we've innovated so many things, but there's no innovation in management. So we've been managing the wrong way. About 200 years ago, we went through something called the industrial civilization. I'm sorry, industrial revolution.
Okay.
And the industrial revolution was basically, it was led by this guy, his name, the name come to me, Frederick Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
We used to study about this guy in college. So Frederick Taylor basically came around and said that, everything. So he proposed what ended up being called scientific management theory, where people came together and the crux of that is that we were fascinated by machines, and we wanted everything and everyone to work like machines. So we talked about this a little bit. Action and rational thought. Those two things we value and we love. Everything else that makes us human just gets in the way, right? So that doesn't make us an efficient organization.
Right.
Because that we can't execute, we can't function well. So what was the solution? Take everything that makes us human out of it. Because we're fascinated by machine. We saw businesses as machine and people as machine parts. So we took all of those things out. So then that left us with two faculties that we value. So if I want to work with people and if I want to manage them and if I want to lead them, I need to get them to behave in a certain way, and I need to get them to think in a certain way. And we think they're connected, right? If you think like this, you're going to behave like that. But we've ignored emotions. We've ignored aspirations. We've ignored goals. We've ignored energy that we have. We have our beliefs and our predispositions, and there are talents that we bring to the table that others don't, and we ignore all of that, right? And we say you need to be these two things. So, by the way, we're not explicitly saying it. This is like an undercurrent.
Yeah, it's a programming.
It's like, right? It's programming. If I want to bring so now the problem with that, which is okay, fine, it's worked, quote unquote, right? People have built organizations.
Yeah.
So why change that? The reason is that Gallup has been doing a study for something like 10 years, 15 years, I think since 2016 or something like that, where they say that our employee engagement is at 33%. Most of so only 33% of our people are engaged to their work. Everybody else has a side gig or a weekend project that they're more passionate about than the 9 to 5 work. They show up at 9:01, leave at 8:50, 4:59. I'm done, right? It's your problem, not mine, right? So that's not engagement. So we are not engaged people. So if you run a business, which you do, and if you have 5 people, what do you think your biggest expense is? People, exactly. That's our biggest salary. This is our resource that we already pay for.
Correct.
But we only utilize 33% of that, right? So I need to find a way to engage my people better. And the reason why we don't engage is the root cause of this problem is the fact that I see them not as a human being, because I've gone to schools and I've gotten my MBA and all this, nothing wrong with that. But I'm programmed to think of my people as a means of production.
Correct.
Not as someone who's a human being with all of these faculties, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a moral argument again. It's because, and I'm not using that. So what I need to do is to engage them, see them as a human being, engage them as a human being, bring out all these other faculties in them, right? So that they engage. And then I need to do the work with myself a little bit.
For
right?
sure.
So then when I'm engaged, they're engaged, our productivity goes through the roof.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if I think I have not answered your question.
No, you're going, this is perfect. I have so many more questions.
Okay.
So do you think that knowing this, right, for me, I am a high collaborator. So it's in me to just, I want to know how you feel. I want to know all things.
Right.
And I want you to bring that to work, right? And we can work through it. There's still work to do, but I allow it. I love it. It's part of my culture.
Right.
Do you think that leaders who know this are a little apprehensive or resistant because of how much work it takes?
They are, yes, 100%. I get a lot of pushback. Yeah. And it requires a kind of sort of like a rethinking. It's a paradigm shift, and it's a big paradigm shift.
Yeah.
and it also is not helped by the fact that nobody else is talking about it. So part of the reason why I had my podcast called The Business Philosopher with the New Podcast is because I wanted to create like a community where it's okay to think about these things and talk about these things. And I think of it, and I also have a little newsletter that I just started this year called 360 Business Lab Digest, which is, the idea is just we're exploring ideas.
Yeah.
So that we can collaborate and communicate with other people who are also. So being my own business philosopher is not applauded. No one's your stuff is not gonna go viral.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a clip on TikTok is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Not going on, but LinkedIn, YouTube, these guys won't. No one wants to hear about this.
It's because still archaic.
It's still, yeah, right. So but we're talking about the future of work in a way that the technology hasn't caught up yet.
Yes.
So helping someone become a business philosopher, the first step, I think, coming to the answer to your question, is to find out that they have a reason to do it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If they don't have a reason to do it, they won't do it.
They're never going to do it.
Yeah. Microsoft today, Bill Gates was a business philosopher when it was in its infancy. Today, Microsoft won't listen to this because they don't need to. They're very powerful. They have a lot of market share, and they're doing well as a business entity. So they don't need to do this. Now, there might be some pockets. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
For now.
Yeah.
I think there's a shift happening.
Yeah.
Because I did not think of this, but I wrote it down because you're right. I think we learned this because we learned how to win wars. And how to win wars is to deprogram and create machines. And so when you can deprogram and create machines, and then we brought that back to, our regular civilization, it was like eye-opening, right?
Yes.
For the Rockefellers and all these people who built this country, right? And so then they just taught that. How do we get them from a young age to just be a machine?
Right.
And so I think
produce.
To produce.
That's it. Yeah.
To just produce.
Yeah.
And consume.
Produce and consume. Right.
Produce and consume.
Yeah.
That is very cool. I love this conversation, by the way. I thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So now that we're talking about, and I want to preface that even AI has more empathy than some of our leaders, and AI is a machine.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It is. If you give ChatGPT a question give it a case study, it's going to respond with empathy.
Yes. Yeah. I actually will say things like, "I know what you're going through. This must be hard." Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And here are some steps. It's fascinating. So how do we teach, what is a human to you? What is your definition of a human?
Yeah. So the definition of a human is bringing back those faculties back into the definition of what it means to be human. So basically, human beings. So let's take it down to basic, right?
Please.
We're having this conversation right now. So there's me, Bhavesh, and there's you, Romie, right?
Yes.
So we have two perspectives, right? And yet, each one of us, right, this right second, this moment, can look at ourselves having this conversation. If you have listeners, right, that just changes the whole shift, right? You feel that shift right now, right? So I get goosebumps when I talk about this.
Me too.
So if you have listeners right now, they can see themselves or feel themselves listening and being almost like a third-party witness to this conversation, right? Now, as far as we know, only humans have this capacity. And I call it self-awareness or just awareness, right? The name of my company is AWARE, AWARE. It stands for Way of Awareness, right? So it's about bringing this into every aspect. So, and everything I talk about, none of it is dogma. I don't push belief systems or anything like that. Check it out for yourself. So if this doesn't convince you, then go away from it, do something else. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that, right? But if you see this and if you feel this, that, okay, there is an awareness here that is looking out from behind these eyes, right? And so that's awareness. Now, self-awareness, today we talk about, emotional intelligence and things like that. And then there's a part of that which they talk about self-awareness. And that is actually a pretty strange definition. They call it the awareness of strengths and weaknesses. So That's okay. It's an okay definition, but my definition of being aware is this, and you can test it. You don't have to read books or talk to a PhD or go under a microscope or have your brain split open to see is there really awareness there. It's right here. We can test it for ourselves. So self-awareness. So this is the key to what makes us human beings. As far as we know, we don't know, right? Sometimes I feel like dogs have probably some self-awareness because they'll
For
look at
sure.
you in a certain way, or
For
cats.
sure.
But as far as we know, the animal world doesn't have that, right? Or not to the degree that we have. We cannot really detach from ourselves and see ourselves. So from that comes, I look at that. There's 7 I've identified, just kind of 7 practical dimensions to this awareness. How it plays out in our lives and our businesses. So, and if we have time, I can tabulate those 7.
I would love to go into those.
But this is the key: aware of awareness, being aware of aware.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough for people
Yeah.
in the beginning, but once you teach them
Yes.
how to become the observer is what I call it.
Yes. Being an observer. Yeah.
Just observe.
Yeah.
You are not your thoughts, right? The whole thing. You're not your
Exactly.
thoughts, you are the observer.
Moment.
You're
Right. Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
everything is perfect in this moment.
Exactly.
You have everything you need in this moment.
Exactly.
You don't need
Yeah.
any more money right
Yeah.
now. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean?
This moment.
Things
Right. There are no
and
problems. Yeah.
exactly
Right.
right now.
Right now.
And if you
Yeah.
can live here, and it's tough. I that is my goal,
It's
right?
practice. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's not tough. It's practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's a different side of awareness that I've never thought of in leadership and business,
Right.
is to just be here right now.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it has practical applications.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's go into the 7 dimensions.
Yeah, the 7 dimensions. Okay, so let's start from the bottom up, quote unquote. This is just a way of thinking. It's a mental model, right? So there are no rights or wrongs, but I'm just gonna lay them out as the way that I like to lay them out, and then the audience can pick up the things that they agree with and they want to play with, right? So self-awareness to me is the first one, is the physical awareness. Right. So, as soon as I bring my attention to my physical body, right, I'm going to make some adjustments. So that's the physical aspect. It's the physical dimension. So, the business world loves it because they want to see us as machines. Right? This is a body who is going to do my work for me, right? Produce and go type on the keyboard and produce something for me that I can sell and make money. Right. Nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Yeah, no.
If I'm coming off, being a cynic or something like that, but
no, not at all.
Yeah, but we put too much emphasis on that. So physical body and sensations, right? So we have 5 senses, right? So seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, and tasting. So just bringing awareness to those. And by the way, another term for awareness is attention. So attention is a more focused awareness, right? So I bring attention. So that's the physical aspect. The first dimension. The second dimension is the energy pattern, right? So I wake up in the morning, I feel in a certain way, right? My energy is drained, right? Sometimes, and then sometimes we feel like, it's an expansive energy, everything is opened up. So and in the Western philosophy, that's more just breathing. Every exercise that we engage with, even if it's boxing,
requires
breathe,
more
right?
breathing.
We bring attention to our breathing, right? Because that's a gateway to energy. So that's our energy patterns, right? Working through our mind-body mechanism, right? So that's the second one. The third one, this is like a meditation, by the way. I don't know if you feel that. It relaxes you, and so it freaks some people out. But if you really get the gist of this, it actually energizes you and makes you more productive, not less productive. It brings us more attentive. It brings us more intuitive, more clear. So that's the third is emotion. We feel emotions. And I like to, if we do this another time, we can just do a whole episode just on emotions. But the gist of it is that we feel emotions. The funny thing is that people have done experiments in the lab, open up the brain and put electrodes and say, okay, let's light up, make him feel angry and then see if the brain lights up. But there's no need for that, right? We feel emotions. There are times when I'm angry. There are times when I'm sad, and they're all okay, right? There are times when I'm inspired. There are times when I'm just apathetic and I just want to sit down and not do anything, right? So these are all the emotions. there's a spectrum of emotion, right? There's guilt and shame, and those are not useful emotion. And then there's inspiration and peace and love and joy and ecstasy. And those are the two basically polar opposites of the emotions. And there's other things in between, like anger and pride and courageousness and adventure and optimism and hopefulness and all of those things.
You're like going up the consciousness ladder, huh?
The consciousness ladder, yeah, I think you're probably referring to David Hawkins' work.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
that's
work.
what it sounded like you were going
It
up
sounded
the
like
ladder.
that. Yeah, I have my own scale. So because we're on that topic, with the audience, I encourage you to just look up emotional scale.
For sure.
It's a beautiful thing. If you take just one thing from this conversation, I would say to the listeners, pay attention to your emotion. It's a very powerful thing to do.
Yes.
Don't judge it. Don't do anything with it. Just pay attention to it and see what it is. You can try to label it. You can't. You don't have to if you can't find a label for it. Right. So being emotionally aware. We talk about emotional intelligence. I don't like that term because it means that we're using the intellect to push down our emotion. We're trying to, which is not good. That's a repression. So it's a repression of emotion, and that's not healthy. So emotional awareness, it opens it up, and the emotion needs to do something. We don't need to act out, but it can level out.
Yeah.
So the third one is emotion. The fourth one, you're going to have to help me a little bit. The fourth one is intellect, which is, we talked about it. Intellect, there is a left brain, right brain, there is strategy, and there is linear thinking, all of those things, right? So intellect is extremely important. Of course it is. So that's number 4. Number 5 is knowledge or memory. This itself is a huge topic, right? So what I remember, my conditioning, my belief systems, sometimes even the genetic predisposition. We are born in a certain way. We bring certain talents to this planet. I get a pushback on this too. But I just ask people, think about a 5-year-old on a reality show who's singing. We've all heard these kids who sing, right? As if they're 85 years old.
Right.
With all the emotion and everything. Right. Where is this coming from? Right. So there is a talent there. That
they came here with it.
They came here with it. They brought it with them. Right.
They brought it with them.
So there's also connection. I think that we're all connected.
For sure.
And we all tap into that. Artists are best at doing this. They tap into our collective condition and collective what we share. Right. Well, you can call it awareness if you want. So you have, I think we are at 4 and 5. The 5 is memory, right? Knowledge, the old term of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
I know this. This is my database of information that I've collected.
Right.
And everything that goes with it. And then the 6th one is, in psychological term, they call it the ego, right? Is the sense of I. Basically identification or identity or identity. So, it's this me, this person, this mind body mechanism that is separate from everything else.
Right.
And we have a conception of this idea, self-image, we call it. We actually have sort of like an image of like an outline, because we don't see ourselves except when we look at ourselves in the mirror or the camera. So there is a sense of I, right? And that plays out in a certain way. And there are good things about this. We always,
of course.
Some people think that ego is not good. That's not necessarily true, right?
Correct.
It's good to play out at this.
Correct.
As this expression, right? In the world, right? As a manifestation. And then the one above that is where we actually talked about this, the awareness, right? Is the awareness of awareness. Right? Awareness is being aware of itself, and then the body is doing what it needs to do, and then that brings us in the present moment, and then we can just communicate from that or work from that. So that's 7. The last one I sometimes call it the inspiration point.
It's true.
So those are 7 dimensions, and the substratum of all of that is awareness.
Right.
And I'd like to use the word consciousness, because then people think, okay, here's the new agey guy again. You're talking about consciousness, stuff like that. But you can call it whatever you want. There are so many different names for this. Even awareness ultimately is not the right word, but it's a good placeholder for now.
Right? For sure. It allows people to conceptualize it, right? It allows people to actually envision it. I understand, for sure.
Yeah, right.
I do agree. A lot of people in the new age stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool because we're shifting. And I agree. You don't want to kill the ego. The ego is part of you.
Yeah.
Right? You want to actually embrace the ego and perhaps make the ego a little bit more subservient than it is right now.
Yeah. Well, I would say that ego it depends on the context and where you
Okay.
are. Right. I would say ego ultimately there is this idea of self and enlightenment and things like that. Ego actually
Yeah.
just drops over. But so, it's just then it's just you just become everything
Right.
and
Because
there
you
is no
are
ego.
everything.
But that's an extremely small percentage of people
Mm-hmm.
who are there or who even aspire to be there. We're
Correct.
talking in business context here. So the idea is, okay, I need to be functional and productive and clear and clean and all of these things, and I need to come across well and communicate well and live life on this planet well, healthy,
Right.
wealthy, successful, happy, all of those things, and relationships and all of those things. So for that, ego can be an instrument.
Yes.
Ego
That's
can
what,
be
yes. It's a
yeah,
tool.
it's
It
a
can be
tool,
a tool.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and tool for having fun, if nothing else.
For sure. Let's play the game,
Let's
right?
play the game.
Let's play the
Exactly.
game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that my last question is, what do you think is missing in this modern management? And I think we've touched on it a little bit. And do you think it's mainly the human aspect, or are there other things that we haven't touched on that you would say is missing?
Yeah, I resist the urge to make anything that sounds like ethical or moral argument. All of these things that I'm talking about is not a should. You should do this, you must do this. It's none of that. It is examine it for yourself, see if it benefits you personally, if you're a leader, your organization, your team, your business. I think it does. And I think there are ways that it can happen. And that's all I do. Right. But don't make it a dogma. Yeah. So to answer your specific question, is there anything else? I don't think so. I have this argument with my family all the time. Like, for example, I don't like to talk about politics, but, but we just said the word here. We worry about government and, this and that happening with the government. And I think my stance is always that no system is going to solve our problem. The problem is not ever out there. It's always here. And this is collectively and individually. We
Correct.
have created all our problems,
Correct.
100% of them. And the day that we take the responsibility for that, that's when we'll actually find our solutions. But as long as we're blaming a system or a person or a community or someone else or something else, we're not going to find our problems.
Yeah.
I was just having a discussion with my family about the Middle East. And there will never be a problem unless and until we all go in within and come from that.
Correct.
Maybe one side will come and say, well, okay, we drop everything.
Right. Right.
And it's peace from now on. Right. But
Yeah.
who knows? So
Yeah.
I think going in, I think is it's like the reason why I love to do this with businesses is because it's like recreating a microcosm of the
Right.
world that you want to see.
Yes.
So
Yes.
your team, if you have 6 people working
Yes.
for you, if you have 20 or 100 people, you're creating a microcosm, and that doesn't
100%.
mean that you're not competing in
Mm-hmm.
in the world. You are actually competing more efficiently. You are a more efficient team. You're a better team. You're a more clearer team. You are executing better.
Yeah. You're creating the life you want to see.
Exactly. You're right. And the team and the people and the community and
Right.
the organization that you want to see. Right? So to me, it sounds almost fundamentalist,
Right.
but to me, I don't think there is any other problem. No,
Right.
government's problem, government's job is to govern,
Mm-hmm.
not to bring about changes.
Right.
So when a
Mm.
politician says that I'm a change candidate, it's nonsense, right? Their job is to govern, right? It's the teachers and the educators and the coaches. Their job is to come to us
Yes.
and teach us
Right.
and help us transform, right, from the inside out. And some things that we talked about. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. And I have a follow-up now.
Okay.
So if there's a leader out there who leads people but does not want to, so two-part question, does not want to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
do you say then exit the people leader part? And is it okay for a leader to not want to do the work, but know that it's best for the team and yet self-sacrifice that to say, this is better for my team, although I don't necessarily believe in it. I know fundamentally it's good. So do you,
So
yeah,
work meaning this work, like
this
going
work.
within work,
Yeah,
right?
because
Yeah,
it takes work.
yeah. It won't work if you
It
don't do
won't
it on
work.
yourself. It won't work for others. It just not possible. So because then it'll become a dogma. If you don't understand this, and if you don't, and I'm not
If you
saying
can't
that
live it.
100%.
Yeah.
If you can't live
Okay.
it, some aspect of it.
Sure,
Once you
sure.
live
I'm
that
with you.
aspect of it, then you can talk about it.
Correct.
So even if it's 0.01%, but
Yeah.
there's an
Something.
openness, something,
Yeah.
right? Then that's a gateway to doing this. But if there is a complete shutout, we've all seen bosses who read the book that's the bestseller and comes to work and says, okay, we're going to work from this now, right? Or
Right.
whoever that the author might be.
Sure.
And that becomes the book of the month and the fad, right? And then it
Yeah.
goes away because it's a dogma. Then dogma is somebody else's truth that without examining, I accept as my own, right? If someone says something and I say, I believe in that, right? But I really have not experienced it myself. So this is why I so insist on all 7 things that we talked about. You can 100% test with yourself and say, is this true or not? True or not? True or not? Right? And if it's not, then that's okay.
That's okay.
But if you make it somebody else's truth, that's what being your own business philosopher means, right? When you take somebody else's truth and without making it your own, living it, then it falls flat.
Yes.
It actually probably causes more problem than it solves any.
100%. There's so much there. I think we're going to need a part 2 because there's so much there about authenticity and like what we're mimicking and why we're doing that.
Yeah.
And I would love to get into emotion as well.
Sure.
And so
Happy to.
Of course, what are your final thoughts, even though I feel like we kind of did that? Do you have any last final thoughts?
Yeah. The last thought I think probably is, Romie, that I think we don't talk about things, but we don't mean it. And I think, for example, emotional intelligence. Most of the people who come to us, and if we ask them, you talk about emotional intelligence, they're very excited about it. If we stop them and ask very nicely, what do you mean by that? What is emotional intelligence? I guarantee you 8 out of 10 times, they'll have no idea what they're talking about, right? So we have not really examined it. That's an example of a dogma, like somebody else's truth. Yes. I accept it, and I'm just repeating it. I really don't know what it means. I will even say this: leadership. What's the meaning of leadership? What is the definition of it? What does it mean to be a leader, right? It's a basic question. Those are the questions that, so, my encouragement to folks is, even as we listen to, I have a podcast, you have a podcast, right? Mm-hmm. These are all great sources to help us learn in both ways, right? Getting insights and also, collecting knowledge. But ask basic questions, right? Which is what I would implore the audience to do, which is that, when someone is talking about self-awareness, ask them, what do you mean by that? What is it, right? Just like you've been doing with me this whole time, right? With this curiosity. And you can ask questions without being offensive or anything like that.
Of course.
Can you please explain to me, as if, I actually like to approach people as if they have some beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful things to share with me.
Yeah.
And that's going to blow me away. By the way, it does most of the time.
Exactly.
Every single person has something to share that's going to blow you away. So that's my final thought. Keep their curiosity, but kind of take it down to the basics. What are you really talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. I like to say, tell me more.
Tell me more. Yes, that's a great question.
Tell me more. And people are always willing to. And I want to also say that I think that curiosity is a form of high intelligence, right? To be curious about something is a form of intelligence to me. So
absolutely.
Beautiful final thought. Bhavesh, thank you so much. Where can people find you on social?
Yeah. Social, probably LinkedIn is the best way to reach out to me. It's Bhavesh Naik spelled out. It's a LinkedIn, I believe linkedin.com, and then they put an IN and then Bhavesh Naik. And
we'll have all the links to his business website and the podcast and your LinkedIn all in the show notes. Bhavesh, thank you so much for such an amazing conversation. I know there's going to be a part 2 because there's so much more to unpack here, which I appreciate. So thank you for your time and thank you for being here today.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. I think I really enjoyed it. I think you are a great interviewer. And so a big part of this is being on the other side of the mic. I think is about its curiosity, like you said, and asking questions and being open to what's being shared. And you have all of that. So I really enjoyed this conversation with you, Romie.
Yes,
Would
me
love to be
too.
back.
Absolutely, you will. Thank you. All right, everybody, that's our episode of Leadership from the Heart. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you found this episode insightful, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.